Hi folks, thanks for joining me for another Relive the Music video. So it's been a wee while since I've done one of these. This year is all about the year 2010. So coming up a wee bit later on, I've got gig highlights. So to set the scene of what was happening in 2010, first of all I'll go through some of the major news stories making the headlines, including this absolute belter of a clip from the Scottish News headlines about the Icelandic volcanic eruption.
I hate Iceland!
I'll then talk about some of the TV and film from this year which I remember, including a famous Saturday night game show hosted by Paddy McGuinness.
No like it, no like it!
I'll also tell you what the top 3 selling singles were in the UK charts, and then I'll go through some of the albums that I bought this year, including releases by bands such as Alter Bridge, Linkin Park, Stone Sour, Iron Maiden and Slash's debut album. And then I'll talk about the gigs that I went to, which included seeing Green Day and Pink for the first time. And I also had a wee trip back to Download where I saw Bullet for My Valentine, some of AC/DC, Rage Against the Machine and Aerosmith, and there's a few others in there as well. So grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee in my Relive the Music mug, which you can get from my store, link attached. Sit back, relax and listen to me babbling on for the next 30 minutes. My name's Ricky and welcome to my channel, Relive the Music. Okay, so there's quite a few weather-related stories in 2010. So in January, start of the year, there was a really bad earthquake in Haiti, in which it's rumoured that maybe about 250,000 people lost their lives. This was to a magnitude 7 earthquake that struck. There was also an amazing story of 33 miners which are rescued from a collapsed mine in Chile. Believe it or not, they'd actually spent 69 days trapped underground and had just survived on basic rations and water, and had also been drinking like the water in the radiators and surviving on rations that had been passed down through some small holes whilst the main rescue operation was taking place. I do remember seeing like the pictures of them coming out the mine, and they were all wearing like dark glasses supposed to protect their eyes because they'd been, in the dark for so long. Okay, and the last weather related story I'll talk about from this year was to do with the volcanic eruption in Iceland and the volcano called
Eyjafjallajökull.
Yeah, I'll give you that again.
Eyjafjallajökull.
Yeah, I did try and pronounce that but totally failed. So basically this volcano had erupted and created a big massive black plume of ash, which the danger was it was actually in the jet stream where planes would fly. So there was a ban on flying for like 6 or 7 days through this space, which cost the airlines like millions and millions of pounds through lost revenue, and also meant that people couldn't go on their holidays to certain destinations. But I do remember this on the news at the time. I think I actually watched it live, and they're asking this couple, what they think, and then this guy just comes in the background and gives it, "I hate Iceland! I hate Iceland!" And it was so funny, and it was going out live, and I remember like the reporter, he was like saying something like, you obviously do get a lot of stag doos at this time of year as well. It was really funny. I loved it.
You only found out when you got to the airport. You didn't know in your hotel.
No, I hate Iceland!
So
I hate
go.
Iceland!
I mean, you get a lot of stag parties leaving Edinburgh at this time of the morning, a lot of drink taken in the early hours as well.
Okay, we also got a new Prime Minister in David Cameron, who was just 43 years of age at the time, making him the youngest Prime Minister since 1812 and the youngest to take over since Tony Blair. And this formed a coalition government between the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats at the time. Okay, we also had a major tech innovation this year when Apple released the first ever iPad, which was meant to bridge the gap between smartphones and laptops. Okay, the Football and FIFA World Cup took place in 2010 in South Africa. And this was a horrid watch. I love watching World Cups normally, even if Scotland aren't in it. But for any of you that did actually see this, you must remember there was these horrible instrument things called vuvuzelas, which is basically like a loud horn that gets blown. And for some reason, like all the Africans and that, they all had them and they were blowing these things and they're like over 100 decibels loud. It was just a horrid watch. Like any of the matches you watched, all you could hear was this. And it was complaints from like managers and stuff because they couldn't get their instructions out to their players on the pitch because they couldn't hear over the vuvuzela noise. So the final itself was actually won by Spain, who were the current European champions at the time. And this went to extra time. It was refereed by England's Howard Webb, who issued a record 14 yellow cards in the final. And it went to extra time, and it was Andres Iniesta who scored in the 116th minute. Okay, so now to the TV shows of 2010, and I'll start with an absolute banger, which was called Take Me Out, and this was hosted by Paddy McGuinness, who in my mind was the actual star of the show, with his humour and his array of catchphrases which became popular with people.
Let the mushy see the peas. Let the super see the man. It's let the fox see the trot. Let the willy see the wonker. Let the tool see the box. Let the chimney see the breast.
So the objective of the game, if you want to call it that, was for one single man to try and obtain a date with one of 30 girls. So this guy would come down, he called it the love lift, he'd come down and dance and show off and blah blah blah. And then he'd be presented with like 30 girls and they all had lights on. So at the start of the game show, they could actually put their light off if they didn't like the look of the guy, and sometimes they did that. And then there was a series of rounds where the guy had to do different things. He'd like to perform a talent or ask questions, or you would see him like doing a sport or hobby. And then at the end of that round, people could leave the light on or they could turn it off. And then Paddy would go and speak to a couple of them that left their light on or left their light off. And then one of the rounds was quite funny, was when they spoke to a friend of the guy. They would always like try and embarrass him, and quite often you'd get a lot of lights turned out after that. So if there was like one light or more left at the end of all the rounds, then the guy had the power and he could basically turn off those that he didn't like, and he would just leave like 2 girls left, and then he'd ask them a question, and whichever one he picked he'd go on the date with. And he would go to this mythical place called Fernando's, which I think was actually in Tenerife, and it was just really funny. As I say, he had a number of catchphrases, so it was the likes of no likey, no lighty, and if you're not turned on, turn off. So yeah, a really funny dating show, and considerably better than Cilla Black's Blind Date, which I used to watch. Okay, this also saw the debut of The Walking Dead, which was a series which lasted for 11 seasons, and it's had a number of spin-offs since. So I loved this when this first came out. So obviously it's to do with like a zombie apocalypse. So you've actually got the English actor Andrew Linkin. He's playing a sheriff deputy called Rick Grimes, and it's meant to be set in Atlanta, Georgia. So he wakes up from a comatose state in hospital and finds that basically there's nobody there, and walks out onto the streets, and then they just sort of see like a couple of zombies. And yeah, the story takes place, and obviously throughout the different seasons, most of the episodes are sort of shaped by avoiding zombies, but also then the conflicts to do with other groups of survivors. And yeah, I loved this, certainly in the first few seasons anyway, but maybe by about season 6 or 7, to be honest. I was just kind of wanting there to be a resolution to it. I was like, I either just want you all to die or get rescued, but I think it's kind of like they stretched it out too long. But certainly at the time when this first aired in 2010, this was gripping must-see television. Okay, so now to the movies in 2010. So the third best-selling film of the year was another Harry Potter film, and this was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. So this story follows Harry Potter, who's been asked by Dumbledore to find and destroy Lord Voldemort's secret to immortality, which is the Horcruxes. The second best-selling film of the year was Alice in Wonderland, and this was directed by Tim Burton, and it follows the story of Alice, a 19-year-old girl who accidentally falls down a rabbit hole. She then returns to Wonderland and alongside the Mad Hatter helps restore the White Queen to her throne by fighting against the Red Queen and her Jabberwocky, which is a dragon that terrorises Wonderland's inhabitants. So I remember going to see this at the IMAX in Glasgow because, I'll kid you not, 5 minutes from the end of the film, the projector just died and they couldn't get it back on, so we ended up getting a refund, and I never actually got back round to going to see it again, and it was a shame because I was really enjoying it up until that point. Okay, and the best-selling film of the year in 2010 was Toy Story 3. So this actually took over $1 billion in revenue at the box office, which is impressive, but it actually had one of the biggest ever budgets, which was $200 million, which is some amount of money. So the story follows Woody, Buzz and other toys when they're accidentally donated to the Sunnyside Daycare Centre by Andy's mum, and the toys must decide where their loyalties lie. Okay, so now to the best-selling singles of the UK charts in 2010. So coming in at third place was American singer-songwriter with their debut solo single Bruno Mars and Just the Way You Are. And the second best-selling one was Matt Cardle. Now he was the winner of the 7th series of the X Factor, and his song was called When We Collide. And the best-selling single of the year in 2010 was Eminem featuring Rihanna with Love the Way You Lie, and that was a cracking song, and I actually really enjoy listening to. There's a cover version of that on Pop Goes Punk by a band called A Skylit Drive, so yeah, look that one up. Okay, so now to the albums of 2010, and first up was You Me at 6 with the album Hold Me Down, and this was the follow-up to their 2008 debut album Take Off Your Colours, and this is 12 tracks lasting 41 minutes long, and the 3 songs I actually like best from it were the 3 singles released from it, which were Underdog, Stay With Me and Liquid Confidence. Okay, Lost Prophets released their 4th studio album called Betrayed, and this was the follow-up to 2006's Liberation Transmission. So the band members had said that they thought that this album sounded a bit darker, a bit more grittier and apocalyptic sounding, with Watkins himself describing the lyrics as a bit more nasty and horrible and a better representation of his own character. So probably never a truer word said than that, although nasty and horrible is probably too good for him. So the album has 11 songs on it, lasting 47 minutes, and personally I don't actually think it's that heavy a sounding album. I actually think there's quite a lot of sort of sing-along songs on it, a bit like Liberation Transmission. So the likes of Streets of Nowhere is quite catchy, and when it comes to the chorus you've got the la 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 sing-along bits, and then the other song, For He's a Jolly Good Felon, that starts off pretty cool with Simon, don't start with all the lying, and then the next verse is Mikey, where'd you get the Nikes? And yeah, it's quite good sing-along ones. And then you've got the slow one, Dirty Little Heart, which I like. Destroyer Destroyer is probably one of the heavier sounding songs on it. And the one thing that I did not like about this album is the fact that a lot of the songs died off, and they tried to like interlude into each other, so you would have like a minute or a minute and a half where the song's already finished and then there's just these kind of strange sounds before it goes into the next song. So I'm not a fan of that at all. It means that you need to hit skip on it. So yeah, that was quite annoying in my opinion. Okay, so there's no question what my favourite song is from this album, and that is Where We Belong, which was the second single taken from the album. So Watkins told Kerrang at the time in an interview that you might think that this song is really happy and catchy, but if you listen to the lyrics, I could actually be saying that we all belong in hell. So yeah, probably never a truer word said there. But in terms of the song, it is a really good song. It starts off with a piano keyboard with the ding, 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 and then it comes in with the chorus or the verse saying, "I'll take these stones away, start a brand new story." And it's really catchy. It just picks up. There's a lot of highs and lows on it, but yeah, that's one of my all-time favourite Lost Prophet songs. Okay, so now to my favourite Welsh band, Bullet for My Valentine, and they released their third studio album called Fever, and this was the follow-up to 2008's Scream Aim Fire. So this had 11 songs on it and was 50 minutes long. And I liked this. I thought this was a cross between their first two albums, The Poison and Scream Aim Fire. So there was a few kind of screamier songs on it, the likes of Begging for Mercy, which is probably my favourite song off of the album. And the opener on it as well, Your Betrayal, is very good. The way it just builds up for about a minute with the drums, and it just gets faster and faster. And then the title track itself, Fever, is very good. And then you've got Bittersweet Memories, which is a kind of Tears Don't Fall, I think, kind of version on this album. It's a slower one, but it's very good as well. So yeah, a good solid third album by them. Avenged Sevenfold released their fifth album called Nightmare, which had 11 songs on it and clocked in at an impressive 1 hour and 6 minutes long. So some of my favourite songs from this are actually the singles which they released. So the excellent slow one called So Far Away, and then Welcome to the Family, and then the other one is Buried Alive. So I think that's a brilliant song. The first time I heard that, and when I heard it live, like, I thought it was two different songs that they'd gone into one. Just if you know the song, like the last sort of 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes, it's just like a kind of change of direction in the guitars, and it's really catchy. It's got a really good groove to it. And then obviously the title track itself, Nightmare, is a really good song. I just love the way the intro to that starts. It's really recognisable when it comes on. My favourite band of all time, Iron Maiden, released their 15th studio album called The Final Frontier, and this was the follow-up to 2006's A Matter of Life and Death. It had 10 songs on it, and it came in at 1 hour and 16 minutes long. So I'm not like a huge fan of this album. I have said it before in one of my follow-up Iron Maiden videos when I was talking about a proposed like future tour, when I only put When the Wild Wind Blows on it. Some of the songs have grown on me as I've sort of listened to this in the last few weeks. So El Dorado, I think, is really good. And then Mother of Mercy and The Alchemist. But aside from them, you know, I'm not like a huge fan of this album. The standout track, and I'll stand by it, is When the Wild Wind Blows, which clocks in at an impressive 11 minutes and was solely written by Steve Harris. Stone Sour released their third album called Audio Secrecy, which had 14 tracks lasting 55 minutes on the standard edition, and I thought this was a really good album. So I've said already before that I'm quite a fan of Corey Taylor's stuff when he's singing with Stone Sour as opposed to the Slipknot stuff, so it's a wee bit less aggro and a wee bit more bearable on the ears, shall we say. So I thought this was a really strong start to the album. You had Mission Statement, and then Digital, or brackets, Did You Tell? And then you've got Say You'll Haunt Me, which is really catchy and has the little supernovas in my head. There's also quite a number of slow songs in the album, which I don't mind. I think they get carried off really well. So you've got the likes of Dying, Hesitate, and Imperfect. And then on one of the editions where there's extra tracks, there's another song called Anna, which I really like. And then you've got a few kind of rockier songs on it, such as Let's Be Honest and Unfinished. And yeah, I think this was a really good album and enjoy listening to it from time to time. Linkin Park released their fourth studio album called 1,000 Suns, which was the follow-up to 2007's Minutes to Midnight. So this was the longest album, clocking in at 48 minutes long, and there was 15 tracks on it. However, some of those tracks are like speeches by famous people such as Martin Luther King, Robert Oppenheimer and Mario Silva. This also was a concept album, so I didn't realise that at the time, but it's talking about humans' fear to nuclear warfare and the fallout from it. So the band actually experimented with several different sounds on this album. So one of those is on the song Wretches and Kings, which is a kind of reggae feel to it, I think. And it was actually paying homage to Public Enemy in the song Fight the Power. There's also a lot of other good tracks on it I like, such as Robot Boy, Iridescent, and then the standout track for me is Waiting for the End. I love that song. Alter Bridge released their third album, simply called AB3, and this was the follow-up to 2007's Blackbird album. So there was 14 songs on it, lasting 66 minutes long, and it was notable the fact that Miles Kennedy actually plays more lead guitar in this album than he did in the previous two, and also Mark Tremonti's vocals were more prominent. The lead single, Isolation, is actually their most successful single to date, and I really think this is a good, strong, solid album. It's one of those ones where I don't think there's really a song that comes on and you want to hit the skip button on it. There are some really good, strong songs on it, so the likes of Ghost of Days Gone By, I Know It Hurts, Life Must Go On, but the standout track for me on it is It's a Wonderful Life. It's another one of those slower ones. It's kind of up there with Watch Over You and Open Your Eyes in terms of like Alter Bridge's slower songs for me. A Day to Remember released their fourth album called What Separates Me From You, and this had 10 songs on it, lasting 33 minutes long. So the opening song on it, Sticks and Bricks, is probably one of their most heaviest songs, and indeed the opening line from it says, I am fueled by all forms of failure. And Jeremy McKinnon, the lead singer, he actually said that that's 100% directed at everybody who doubted their band. So some of the other songs on it which I really like are All Signs Point to Lauderdale, I'll Be Tails, You'll Be Sonic, and then the standout track is the catchy All I Want. Okay, the last album I'm talking about for 2010 is an absolute belter, and this was by Slash from Guns N' Roses, and it was just simply called Slash. So he was going to call it Slash and Friends, but decided against that. However, obviously going forward, he picks Miles Kennedy to sort of sing with him, and it would be Slash featuring Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators. But for this album, the standard edition had 14 songs on it. So I remember on the run-up to this album coming out, I actually took a day off work just so that I could listen to this when this album dropped at midnight. I think it was the Thursday night into the Friday. And then just sort of listening to these tracks and repeat. So there's some really good songs on there. So it's obviously featuring a whole host of superstars. So you've got Ian Astbury of The Cult on the opener, which is called Ghost, which is an absolute banger, just the way the guitars open up on it. And then you've got Chris Cornell for the song I Promise. You've got Adam Levine from Maroon 5 singing on it. You've got M Shadows from Avenged Sevenfold. Ozzy Osbourne's in there and Crucify the Dead. You've also got Lemmy from Motorhead doing Dr. Alibi. Now, this was actually meant to be the song that was penciled in for Chester Bennington from Linkin Park. However, they couldn't quite get the copyright agreed with Linkin Park on it, so that didn't get the go-ahead. But I have actually heard that song, and I'll put a link in the comments so you can actually hear that version. And it actually just sounds really like the Lemmy version, but they've changed the lyrics on it. So the way that Chester actually sings it, it kind of sounds similar between like Velvet Revolver and Stone Temple Pilots in my opinion, but you'll notice the similarities in the terms of the music between that and Lemmy's version. And then Fergie from Black Eyed Peas, she did Beautiful Dangerous, which is a really good song. And then there's a whole bunch of like extra songs. So there's a Chinese or Japanese artist on it, which they do a version in English and in Japanese. And then you get Beth Hart, and there's another one with Alice Cooper and Nicole Scherzinger. And yeah, really good album. So the sort of thing to note from that was the fact that Miles Kennedy was the only artist to actually sing 2 songs on it. So he had Back from Cali and Starlight. And I was really happy that going forward they would make an announcement sort of not long after this that Miles Kennedy would be joining the band to tour with them. Okay, so now to the section that most of you might have been waiting for, and this is me talking about the actual gigs that I went to. So I have spent quite a lot of time looking through all these concerts to see if I can find some really good footage on YouTube, so that I can show you it whilst I'm talking about the concert, and then hopefully play some clips. So that's what I'm aiming to do. So please don't be offended if I've like screen recorded and taken your clips. I've tried to make sure that it's people that aren't like active users. I think there's only one girl, Ali Kemp, who's still uploading videos, and I've got some of her footage from like the Pink concert, so it's only fair that I'll put her channel link in the description below. So if you want to check out that footage in full, you can go and visit her channel and subscribe to her. But aside from that, it looked like I took stuff of a lot of dormant accounts. But if you are watching this and you think, oh, that looks like my video, then please don't get offended. But it would be quite funny if you could let me know in the comments if it was your video. But anyway, hopefully you don't mind, because it is copyrighted anyway. Okay, so my first gig of 2010 was on the 18th of February, and that was seeing Lost Prophets at the O2 Academy, and that was £22.50 to get in. So this was on their Betrayed tour. So they obviously had the album released just at the end of January, so it'd been out for about a month or so before this gig. So as you would imagine, they played quite a lot of songs from this album. So they played 7 out of the 11 tracks of the album, and they did 17 songs on the night. So they opened up with a couple of new tracks from the album, which were If It Wasn't For Hate, We'd Be Dead By Now, and It's Not the End of the World, But I Can See It From Here. So not really 2 of my favourite songs off of that album, and indeed 2 of the ones which I did talk about earlier, which were Destroyer Destroyer and Streets of Nowhere, weren't played on the night, which I'm not sure why, because they're a lot better than some of the other ones that they did play, in my opinion. Of course, it's all just about personal preference. So you had quite a lot of songs on there from Start Something as well. So you had the likes of Last Summer and Last Train Home, and then they finished with Shinobi versus Dragon Ninja before going off and doing an encore, which was just actually one song, and a really sort of weak one in my opinion, which was The Light That Shines Twice As Bright. It's just kind of a slow song that fizzles out. I just think that was a weird choice to end the night on. You want something a bit more upbeat, in my opinion. One thing that was really cool on the night was they did actually interlude and kind of link some of these songs. So Where We Belong, which I really liked, I think it was before that came on, they sort of played Sweet Child of Mine. And then also for one of the other songs, I think it might have been Last Summer, they had Faith No More with The Real Thing. And I'm sure there was a couple others in the night as well. So yeah, I thought that was pretty good. So good to hear some of the new songs, albeit not really the ones I would have chosen, but that was the first gig for the night, and I would see them later on in the year.
You know what to do.
Okay, now to my second gig, or it's more like an event, and that was Download. So this was my second ever Download, having first gone in 2005 when I saw Feeder, Black Sabbath and System of a Down headline the 3 different nights. So I'm not going to talk about sort of any other bands that we saw, because I do plan on doing sort of a deep dive into the different Download experiences that I've been to. So I'm just purely going to talk about the headliners that I saw. So on the Friday night, you actually had AC/DC headlining the main stage, and they actually brought their own like main stage, and it was, I think, to the left of like the stage that we used for the Saturday and the Sunday. I'm not quite sure why they had to have their own one. But anyway, we actually had planned on going to see Bullet for My Valentine, who were headlining the second stage, so it was obviously a bit quieter. So we went there, and the boys put on a fantastic show. So they played 14 tracks in total, and it was obviously featuring quite heavily songs from the Fever album. So they played the first 2 actually, which are in order in the album. So you had Your Betrayal and then Fever, and then I think quite early on we got Waking the Demon, and then Pleasure and Pain, and then we got Scream Aim Fire, which I've got actually some good pit footage from that. And we also had Tears Don't Fall, and I think they finished on Alone, and we had Hand of Blood in there as well. So a really good strong set. And in fact, because there was only 14 songs that they did, in the way the stage times were staggered, we actually managed to go and then see about half an hour of AC/DC anyway, albeit we were kind of standing up the top of the hill. But because it was so busy anyway, we would have struggled to get any sort of closer. So that was good. So we caught about sort of 5 songs of AC/DC, and I'm pretty sure there was like fireworks at the end as well for that.
Here we go, don't fucking let us down! 1, 2, 3, get up there! Let's go!
Okay, so the Saturday headliners were 30 Seconds to Mars, but on the main stage we actually had Rage Against the Machine. So this was a no-brainer for me. I had never seen Rage Against the Machine, and I think I'm right in saying this was the only time that they've ever played Download. And what a set! I mean, this was brilliant. So if you're going to play like a festival set, then do this. So they played 14 songs in total, and I mean, it might just be my preferences, but all the songs that they played were like my favourite tracks off of the albums. So, likes of, you had Bulls in Parade and People of the Sun from Evil Empire, which are my 2 favourite songs from that. You had 7 off of their debut album, so we had Bomb Track, Know Your Enemy, Bullet in the Head, and they obviously finished with Killing in the Name. So it was quite funny. I'm sure at one point it actually made reference to the fact, like, thanks to fan power and you guys actually getting us there to like the Christmas #1 and stopping like Simon Cowell and those guys. So it was quite funny that he mentioned that and knew about that. They also had to stop the set at one point. I think it was during People of the Sun, because there was crowd issues, and Zach De La Rocca talks to the crowd and says, you know, look after each other and don't want you getting hurt. This was brilliant. I mean, we weren't that close to it, and I can't really find footage that is that great from it, but I just remember, like, this was brilliant, just like singing along to all the songs. So the one and only time that I've seen Rage Against the Machine, but I won't forget it. This was like a pure brilliant gig.
Good evening! We are Rage Against the Machine from Los Angeles, California! Campaign, that shit was beautiful. It just goes to show that when people get together, have a good idea, act collectively in solidarity around one team, then anything is possible. And what you proved was that your culture, your desire to hear good music and not have pop bullshit rammed down your throat. But it might be about what he represents. This song goes out to all of you. It's called Know Your Enemy. Everybody front to back. Get up. You know, brothers and sisters, I want everyone to hear me right now. I want y'all to please take care of one another. Be careful of one another. Extra team, once again. Oh, shit. Check this shit out! 616, with 16, lines attack, overseas, follow me through, we talking empty trains, with the bars and boots, on top of us, pulling out on the floor, on the country with confidence, and you will not get what you need to get, so don't eat a blood trench, get offensive like that. Yo. Give us 1 second. We just want to make sure that no one's hurt. Everyone's okay. Everyone's alright. Check it out. As we understand it, there's a couple people being really hurt over here, but we just like everyone to listen up, and if you wouldn't mind just taking a couple steps back, just a couple steps back. That's all we need. Just for our brothers and sisters up front right here, just a couple of steps. Alright? Thank you so much. Once again, 616, 116, crime attack.
Okay, so on the Sunday was a little bit torn because you had Stone Sour playing the second stage and you had rock icons Aerosmith playing the main stage. So having never seen Aerosmith and the fact that they were getting a wee bit older, we thought, right, we'll go and we'll watch Aerosmith. Now Friday and Saturday had been really good weather days, but Sunday it had been forecast to rain. And this is a true story, but see, when Billy Idol was playing about 5 o'clock in the day, he was playing the song White Wedding, and you know the lyrics where it goes, "It's a nice day for a white wedding." No sooner had he sang that and it started pissing down, and this lasted all the way to when Aerosmith came on. So if you've been to download, you'll know there's not really anywhere to hide. So unless you've got an umbrella or you can manage to get into one of the tents, then you just need to put up with it. So we had quite a long wait in the rain, like 3 or 4 hours from Billy Idol until Aerosmith came on. So we actually only stuck around for 5 songs of Aerosmith's set because we were just cold and miserable and the rain was lashing down. I'll show you a couple of highlights and you can actually kind of see the rain coming in under the lights. And yeah, it wasn't a fun experience, but thankfully I managed to see a few good songs. So they opened up with Love in an Elevator, and we got Mama Kin and Eat the Rich, and I think we saw Living in the Edge before we called it a night and went for a taxi home, which was a shame because they did 17 songs in total on the night, and it was a really good kind of set list that they played. But anyway, that was that. A week after download, I went to see Green Day at the SECC, and this was about £40. Now, my mate Jason actually gave me this ticket just a few days beforehand. I wasn't meant to be going, but one of his friends couldn't make it, and I'm glad that he asked me to go because this was one of the best concerts that I'd been to at the time. And I actually did post that, I think, in Facebook, saying that this was one of the best gigs I've ever been to. And I think I was just blown away by the value for money. So they played for about 2.5 hours and played 31 songs. And I didn't know that would become, standard for them. Having seen them another couple of times since at Bellahouston Park, they did likewise and played for about 2.5 hours. So that's really, really good value, playing all those songs, given that a lot of the songs are quite, short, like 3-4 minutes long. So yeah, I thought they were brilliant, a good interaction with the crowd. I also remember a point where they got a fan up on stage. Now, I don't know if he was a plant or if he'd won a competition or something like that, but he came up to sing Longview and he was actually really, really good, I thought. So I'll try and leave a wee bit of that after this so you can check that out. But in terms of the songs that they sang, it was great. You had Know Your Enemy, Holiday, We Are the Waiting, Boulevard of Broken Dreams, Welcome to Paradise, Longview, Basket Case, She, and then you had a couple of encores, came back on and did American Idiot, Jesus of Suburbia, and then they finished on Good Riddance, Time of Your Life. So thoroughly enjoyed it, and yeah, really glad that I went.
As my memory rests, we never forgets what I lost. Wake me up when September ends.
let's go. Here he comes. I say hey. Sit around and watch that too, but nothing's on. I change the channels for an hour or two. Tweet on my thumbs just for a bit. I'm sick of all that same old shit. In a house where none but doors and I fucking like it. Live my life and close my eyes. Take me away.
5 days after seeing Green Day, there was another first for me when I went to go and see Pink. And this was at Scotland's National Stadium, Hampden Park, and it was a Saturday night. So this was a good day because we actually went to the Queen's Park Bowling Club beforehand and got some drinks there before going to the gig, so got some cheap ones in. So I went to this with 4 girl pals, and unfortunately I don't actually have a photo of me, but I took a photo of them once we got inside the stadium, and it was totally packed. So this was in her Funhouse Summer Carnival tour, and yeah, I mean, what an experience this was. I mean, it was worth every penny of that £45. So she played 21 songs in total, and she played 8 off of the Funhouse album. So she opened up with Get the Party Started, and I'm pretty sure she dropped in from the sky again. So there's quite a lot of like theatrical moments throughout this. And I'd like to thank again a girl, in case she's watching this, Ali Kemp. I'm using quite a lot of her footage, so I'll leave her channel below in the description so you can go and check out if you want to watch extended clips from this gig. I've also got a really good souvenir from this if you're watching. So I've got this pink mug featuring the gig ticket, and then my logo on the side, and I've designed it in pink, so it's pink inside with a pink handle. So if you click on the screen, you should be able to take you to my shop where you can buy that if you want a good souvenir from this gig. So we weren't actually that close to the stage, but we were kind of in the middle, but you didn't feel like you were miles away because she did all these different things. So I remember at one point she went in one of those big balls, what are they called, a Zorba ball or something. I'll put the footage up so you'll see it, but it's like a big clear ball, and she was getting, you know, rolled through the crowd. The crowd were like pushing her, so that was pretty cool. I'd never seen that at a gig before. And then later on, you know, she did the trapezing from going from like pillar to pillar, so you know, you'd get a shot of seeing her like quite close up. Obviously, when I saw her last year, I was in the Golden Circle area and had some really good footage, which is on my channel if you want to go and check that out. But as I say, I'm using Ali Kemp's for this one, and she's got some really good footage of it. So the set list was good, you know, a lot of songs in there that I really like. So the likes of Who Knew, Just Like a Pill, I'm Not Dead. There are also quite a few covers in there. I think she did like 4 on the day. So there was My Generation, and then funnily enough, she's talked about them, but she did a cover of Basket Case by Green Day, and then Roxanne by The Police, and then what would become a staple, the What's Up by 4 Non-Blondes. It also had You and Your Hand in there, and then Leave Me Alone, I'm Lonely, and then So What was the encore. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed the gig, and you know, the girls that I went with, they really enjoyed it as well, and thankfully I would get to see her in just a few years' time, so I wouldn't have long to wait. But yeah, really good gig. And yeah, I know she was probably lip syncing. I mean, she says on it that she doesn't, like she strength conditions for it, but I don't know whether or not she was or not. It was like really good atmosphere and a really good gig.
Great. So I need you to be my drums. Because unless I'm drinking, I can't keep time. If anyone else has ever lost anyone, I'm sure we all have. A pet, a friend, a parent, ex-friend.
Okay, next up I went to see tribute band Guns N' Roses, and that was £10, and that was at the O2 ABC, so that was the smaller bit in the O2 venue. That was the bit downstairs, not the big hall, and obviously sadly it's no longer there, having been burned down. But yet again, it eludes me that I don't have any footage from this gig. So I've obviously spoken about this band on a few other previous years and I couldn't find any footage. A few weeks later I was back in the same location but not the same hall when I went to see Lost Prophets. And that was £23.50, so a quid dearer than February. So we're obviously in the main hall, and this was them still on the Betrayed tour. So they only did 15 songs this time, as opposed to the 17 which they did in February. And they only played 3 songs from the Betrayed album, as opposed to 7 in February. So a lot of the songs were from the Start Something album. I think they played 7 from that. So you had Burn Burn, Last Summer, Last Train Home, To Hell We Ride, and then you had The Fake Sound of Progress and Shinobi versus Dragon Ninja kind of ending the night before they came back on for an encore of Sway, which, as I said earlier, like, pick a really good strong song for a finisher. Like, don't pick one that just kind of fizzles out, in my opinion, but that's what they did. But in terms of the actual gig itself, it kind of followed some of the themes from the one in February. So again, they had some really good wee interludes, like Linkin Up, where they would sing like wee clips of different songs, like Sweet Child of Mine, before going into, you know, a Lost Prophet song. So can't really fault them from that. But yeah, it was okay. But if I was going to rate it, then it wasn't as good as the one in February, but maybe that was the excitement of hearing some of these songs for the first time. And I was still a bit annoyed they didn't play Destroyer Destroyer or Streets of Nowhere, but I did get to hear Where We Belong, and that just re-emphasised that that's one of my more favourite tracks. So all in all, a decent night. Okay, 2 days after that concert, I was seeing Limp Bizkit at the O2 Academy, and that was £25 to get in. So this was the first and only time that I've actually seen Limp Bizkit. And yeah, I do remember some stuff about this, and it came back to me when I was watching the footage. So he played 14 songs in total. 7 of them are from the Chocolate Starfish album, and I was pleased about that because that's most of the songs that I kind of like. But I'll remember this gig because he actually jumped into the crowd. He was up in the kind of arches singing, and I think it was like Eat You Alive, and he jumped into the crowd, and that was quite close to me actually. When I was trying to find footage, I actually thought that I maybe saw myself at one point, because what happened is he jumped into the crowd, and I didn't know until I was watching this back, but I remember him like swinging for somebody, like going to throw a punch, and it was only about 2 yards away from me, thinking, this Fred Durst's gone crazy here, like what the hell's happened? But when I was reading back the footage, and then when he was saying in the mic, he's saying that basically somebody grabbed his ass. But even still, it was like a bit of an overreaction, I think. Like, I just remember thinking, God, he's gone wild. So we were like there, just like looking up. He was like in one of the speakers, really close to us. So yeah, I mean, it was a good gig. The sound was good, and played a lot of good songs that I like. So My Way, Take a Look Around, and then they sort of finished with Break Stuff. And then they went off, came on with an encore of 3 different songs, Boiler, Nookie, and then finishing up with the cover of George Michael's Faith. So yeah, really good, apart from Fred Durst's outrage. But I'll always remember it for that, and I'll put some of the clips in it so you can kind of see it for yourself. Into October, and my next gig was Alter Bridge at the O2 Academy, and that was £17.50 to get in. So this was them on their AB3 tour promoting this album, and they played 7 songs off of that album out the 11 tracks, and they played 18 songs in the night, doing 9 from Blackbird. So yeah, Miles and Tremonti were in really good form on the night, and the sound was really, really good. So we had a few premieres from that album, so the likes of I Know It Hurts, Still Remains, and Ghost of Days Gone By, and also Slip to the Void. The one that I'm annoyed that they didn't play was my favourite track from that album, which was It's a Wonderful Life. So they never played that. I was hoping that they could have maybe put that in when they did the acoustic bit. When they went off after like 15 songs, they went off after Blackbird, came back on and opened up with Watch Over You. So they changed the guitars and brought the acoustic one out, and Miles did that. And, you know, I think they could have put It's a Wonderful Life in at that point, but anyway, they didn't, and they finished with Rise Today. So all in all, it was a good gig. You know, Miles sounded really, really good, and just a shame for me that I didn't put that song in, but you know, you can't suit everybody. But yeah, good to see Miles and the guys again.
Please feel free to sing along.
Into November, and the day after Guy Fawkes, and I went to go and see Monsters of Mock. See what they did there? That was at the garage, and it was £12.50 to get in. So there was 3 tribute bands, which were Dressed to Kill, Judas Beast and Non Jovi. So obviously it was Kiss, Judas Priest and Bon Jovi. Struggling to find some highlights from this to show you, but you mean £12.50 to go and see 3 bands, albeit tributes, you know, that represents good value in anybody's book. So Saturday night as well at the garage. So yeah, it was a good wee night. My next gig was seeing Skunk Anansie, and this was the first time that I'd seen them since 1996, so a 14-year absence. Obviously they kind of disbanded in 2001 and get back in 2009. So there's a couple of things about this. So normally I show you my gig ticket. Now I don't have the gig ticket, that's not because I lost it. What actually happened with this was there was a radio competition on Rock Radio at the time. I think it's since disbanded. But anyway, you were to guess who this secret band was, and they basically gave you the initials of the band, which made up Scam. And what it was is they did a secret, like an acoustic set. I'm trying to remember the venue, right? It was in Waterloo Street in Glasgow. It was either like the old Bar Sporto or what's Kitty O'Shea's now. It was like you went down into it and it was like a wee venue. There was probably only about 100 people or 150 people in there, and they did 6 or 7 songs, and then we actually got an opportunity to meet the band, and I got a picture. So I'll put it up for you here. You've seen it before, maybe if you've watched some other videos. So I had came straight from work and I had my suit on. I had this like blue suit on, and Skin actually joked saying, "Oh, you look like our manager." And then one of our band members says, "Oh, but you'll be better than him." And it's a really good photo. I'm quite pleased with that one. Should maybe get it framed. I think it looks really good. So after getting my photo taken with them, I decided to go up the road and change out my suit, and then I came back in to the actual gig at the O2 Academy to see them perform 21 songs as part of their Wonderland tour. So she put on a really good show. I'm pretty sure she was dressed in like a sparkly kind of black cat suit, and she was interacting with the crowd a lot, and indeed she like crowd surfed over it during one of the songs. It might have been Weak, can't remember. And there's some good songs in there. They played 8 songs off the Wonderland album, which I'm not too familiar with, I'll be honest. But songs like I Can Dream went down well, and the catchy Twisted. And then they came back on for an encore with the excellent Hedonism, and then finished in Little Baby Swastika. So really good to end the 14-year absence of not seeing them by seeing them twice in the one night and getting my picture taken with them.
Everything's satirical! It is fucking political! Everything's political!
Into December, my next event was the Taste of Chaos, and that was £25 to go and see 4 amazing bands. So you had Hailstorm, Buck Cherry, Papa Roach and Disturbed, and I think that was the order they played in, although I can't quite remember, so if it's not, then quite happy for people to correct me in the comments. So I think first up was Hailstorm, and they did about 6 or 7 songs, and I must admit at that particular moment I wasn't that familiar with Hailstorm's work, but I just remember thinking that wow, she's got a powerful voice. And then second up was Buck Cherry, I think, and he did 8 songs, and the usual, just like skinny body, top off, sweating away and just giving it his all, just really raw, raucous energy. So some really good songs in there. So All Night Long, Lit Up, It's a Party, and then finishing with Crazy Bitch.
You like rock and roll!
Okay, so I think Papa Roach were up next, and they did 12 songs and a few tracks in there which are favourites of mine. So they did Lifeline and also Scars, and then they had Forever in there, and also Between Angels and Insects before finishing in Last Resort. So really good to see Jacoby Shaddix and the guys again. Okay, and headlining, I think, Don't Shoot Me Down in Flames, was Disturbed, and I actually think this was the first time that I saw Disturbed. So they did 14 songs, and some really good songs in there that I like anyway, such as The Game and Land of Confusion, which is a Genesis cover, Stricken, good to see. Stupefy, 10,000 Fists was a good sing-along one, and then they finished with Down with the Sickness. So all in all, brilliant value for £25, and what I wouldn't give if you could pay £25 to see 4 bands these days.
Let me see those motherfucking fists in the air! Let's go! How can I feel medicine? I will not recover this time. This is nothingness. Killing me! Say our name with us now. Together, my brothers and sisters, my blood. We are! We are! We are! We all are!
Okay, the last gig for me in 2010 was Ginger Wildheart Band. That was at the garage and it was £12.50 to get in. So I've kind of lost track with like the Wildhearts and Ginger and who comes out the band and who goes in and stuff like that. I'll leave that to more qualified people than myself. But to me, like, the Wildhearts is Ginger and Ginger is the Wildhearts, so they go hand in hand. So it's funny when I look at the set list for this, it's kind of down as like all covers because it's saying Ginger Wildheart and not the Wildhearts. It's one and the same thing to me anyway. So in terms of the songs that they played from this night, this is up there with like one of the best set lists that you could imagine from the material which they'd recorded at the time. So you had You Took the Sunshine from New York, you had My Baby's a Head Fuck, If Love Is Like a Love Bank, I Want an Overdraft, and then a couple of back-to-back sing-along ones with Mazel Tov Cocktail and Vanilla Radio. And then Red Light, Green Light, Caffeine Bomb, Sucker Punch, and then I Wanna Go Where the People Go. And then it went off and they came on with an encore and started off with the slow Jordan Wonderland before ramping it up a couple of notches and finishing with Sick of Drugs and then 29 Times the Pain. So 17 songs, really good value. It was just a few days before Christmas and this really set the mood for me, and yeah, perfect way in terms of my gigs to round off the year for me. Okay, don't miss my next video, which will be Relive the Music of 2011. That'll be coming up in a few weeks' time. So in that, I'll be talking about TV shows such as Friday Night Dinner and Game of Thrones. And in the album front, there's albums by Ed Sheeran, Blackstone Cherry and Steel Panther and a few others. And in the gig front, I also go to see Alter Bridge with Blackstone Cherry. And then this triple header of Def Leppard, Motley Crue and Steel Panther. So set your reminders and subscribe to my channel if you've not already done so, please. Okay, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who stayed and watched the video right to the end, and also to the people that watch my videos regularly and comment on them. So that's ENC666, Good Guy Chucky, City Build Minecraft, Stephen Blake, Glasgow Harley Rider, at 1986 Slippy, and anyone else who comments on them. So it really does mean a lot to me, and if you could give them a wee like and share them as well, I would really like to try and get the word out there, because I think a lot of people would really appreciate these videos, especially now that I'm seeing some footage from a lot of the gigs, and I think people would relate to that. So even if one of you watching tells a friend and gets them to subscribe, that would really mean a lot to me. Also, don't forget to check out my merch. I've got some really cool mugs on there, and there's also t-shirts and there's mouse mats and a few other things. So hopefully you were turned on and not turned off. Let the subscriber see the like button. Anyway, enough of that. I'm off to Relive Fernando's. I'll catch you in the next one.